Okay, we are live. Hey everybody, welcome. It's been a couple weeks because I was away on holiday. But I'm back and I'm trying to get right back into the swing of things. So this video today that we're going to be talking about dropped last week, I think it was, 10 days ago. 10 days ago, in the wake of Zahi Hawass seems to be doing a round of media interviews to promote a public lecture tour, like a paid ticketed lecture tour that he's doing this summer fall. And he was on Joe Rogan, which I had to split into two giant reaction videos. And now he's on Piers Morgan. Should be interesting. We're going to just live react to this today, see what they come up with. What do I think? How does it do in comparison to the Joe Rogan appearance? And yeah, this has appeared on some of the chats that I'm on, so I know a bit about it. So I'll go over some stuff just to start off, and then we'll get right into watching the video. It's 40 minutes long. Hopefully we'll only be here for like an hour and a half. We'll see. Depends on how much I have to say. Just to start us off, if you're unfamiliar, Piers Morgan is an English journalist and media personality. He's been on a bunch of different news shows and a judge on a bunch of reality TV shows. He's known for the fact that he really likes to be outspoken and controversial. And I believe that he had Flint Dibble and Milo Rossi from Mini Minute Man, and then two alt history people on like a month or two ago when all the SAR pyramid scan stuff came out. And he was, I watched it, and I'm pretty sure he said that he wants to believe in all of this kind of stuff. So he's a bit biased, if that is the case, with having all of these people on this channel. Hello, everyone. Also, I forgot to say, feel free to just put any questions or comments you have in the chat, and I'll pause periodically and go through them. So, yeah, that's Piers. He has a platform. People like to listen to him, whatever. Zahi Hawass, in case you are not aware, is an Egyptian archaeologist specializing in Egypt, which is someone that's usually known as an Egyptologist. He used to be the Minister of Tourism and Antiquities in Egypt for a very, very long time. He had a lot of control over archaeology in Egypt, but he is actually qualified for that job. He has a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, and he actually wrote his PhD on Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaura, and like the Old Kingdom in Giza, and he worked for a long time as an inspector at Giza before he became the minister. So like he knows that place pretty well. He has done really great work kind of reclaiming Egyptology for Egyptians. You know, before him, it was very much a lot of foreign teams coming in and doing work in Egypt and taking that work and those results and sometimes those artifacts away. And he's really kind of not allowed that, and he's forced them to let Egyptians get involved and help them kind of reclaim their heritage, which is rubbed some people along the wrong way, but ultimately is kind of the right thing. If you've watched a TV show on ancient Egypt in the past, however many few decades, he's probably on it. He loves being on TV, and he's, he isn't minister anymore, so anyone saying that he still has a lot of control over things in Egypt doesn't know what they're talking about. He still has influence. He's still a very influential figure in Egyptian archaeology, but he doesn't run things anymore. He rubs a lot of people the wrong way. He has a really kind of like a brash, no-nonsense personality. He doesn't have time for fools. He has a pretty big ego. I think that's pretty fair to say. But in some ways that's a bit justified in my opinion. He's made a lot of pretty big discoveries, and he's been a pretty monumental figure, so to speak, in Egyptian archaeology for a really long time. But it's key to remember that as much as he will probably say so, he is not the only Egyptologist out there. He does not represent all of Egyptology, and he is also like 78 years old. He's from a different generation. they do things in different ways. And as it was kind of clear from the Joe Rogan show, he doesn't, I think, have a lot of modern media training. I don't think he spends a lot of time on social media. And I think, I don't think that we should hold that against him. He probably has better things to do, like publishing all of his research. The other two guests that are on today are ones that I've never really watched their stuff. I kind of vaguely know who they are because, you know, my friends on YouTube know of them and have had interactions with them, but I personally haven't. Jimmy Corsetti is an independent researcher, and he owns the Bright Insight YouTube channel. He's a U.S. Army veteran. He used to be an internal fraud investigator, and he has an MBA, so a master's in business administration. No qualifications academically in archaeology or Egypt or anything, but all of his videos are really about ancient civilizations and conspiracy theories and the cosmos and all that kind of stuff. And then the other person that's on here is Dan Richards, who runs Debunking, who also calls himself an independent researcher. And his channel is called Debunking the Past, and he looks at lost civilizations and alternative history. He, as far as I could find when I kind of briefly looked him up on the internet, doesn't have any qualifications in this stuff, is probably almost entirely self-taught. Same with Jimmy, and calling themselves independent researchers, I think, is a way to kind of legitimize themselves because they seem to be largely self-taught, and it kind of is a way to legitimize their messages. And it's, I think, a large part of this backlash that there seems to be happening against the idea of academia and having university education, and promotes this idea that the establishment is suppressing them and all this kind of stuff, and feeds into that whole kind of mentality, in my opinion, of I know better than all these academics who are in their ivory towers and they paid all this money for school and blah, 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 and I'm so much smarter than you, and which is just okay. Which I find ironic, because if they went to school and studied archaeology and then came out and still promoted this stuff, it actually would probably give what they say a bit more weight, because they've actually gone and done the work to study the theory, etc. As far as I'm aware, neither of them have ever actually worked on an archaeological site. I think Jimmy Corsetti made a big fuss a while ago because he went to Göbekli Tepe as a tourist and took some videos about some trees. So, but wasn't actually digging there or anything. So yeah, personally, if I'm going to be listening to somebody as an expert on a topic, I want them to have a background in it. I want them to have worked in it. The benefit of being self-taught and reading textbooks is great. That's fantastic. It's a great place to start. But really, going to university is all about then exposing yourself to lots of different viewpoints and discussions and learning about a lot of the theory behind things rather than just one niche topic, so to speak. I forgot to talk about myself. So, my name is Rachel. I run Inside Archaeology. I am a qualified archaeologist. I have 2 degrees, an undergraduate and a master's. One's in Near Eastern archaeology, specifically Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Rome. I initially wanted to be an Egyptologist. And then I have a master's in human osteoarchaeology, which is the study of human remains. I wanted to be an Egyptologist. That's always been kind of my first love in archaeology, but I kind of decided in school that I had a much broader interest in, the history of everywhere, and something like human osteo I could do anywhere rather than just being tied to Egypt, which is why I went there. But yeah, I still obviously very much am familiar with a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today, and I've done a few videos on it. In terms of my experience, I spent time digging in Jordan while I was in school in the Kingdom of Jordan. And then I've actually worked professionally as an archaeologist in the UK and Canada. And that's not just I was working at a university. I was working out in the field every single day, so to speak, excavating sites all over Canada and the UK. So I've done the profession. I've professionally worked as an archaeologist excavating. And yes, as somebody said in the chat, I am a quote-unquote capitalist, which is a shirt that's for sale in my Redbubble store if you are so inclined to go look at it. Right. I've waffled on for 10 minutes, which is time for 33 of you to join. So thank you for being here with me today. We'll get into it. I'll try and pause at logical points to go to the chat and then whatever, but we'll see how infuriating or not this is. And yeah, if you have any comments or you want to add anything or you have any questions for me, put them in the chat and we'll see what we can do. So let's do this.
Who should work in the pyramids? You have to bring scientists from a museum, from a university, but you cannot bring an amateur from New York or London.
You want to squash debate involving, you know, conspiracy theorists and everything. All we got to do is go in and look. We know where it's at. We could drill a hole. This is doable.
This is the pyramid of Egypt. This is something valuable. This is one of the 7 wonders of the world. Yep. You just can go and boom and drill like this.
When you were on Joe Rogan, you said that you didn't know what Zep Tepi was. And as the premier Egyptologist in the world, you do know the Egyptian creation myth. Would you mind just explaining it to us real quick so that to kind of vindicate yourself and show the world you do know what Zep Tepi is?
I teach the Egyptian creation, but I am saying this term that you're talking about, I never heard of it.
Are you saying on the record?
I have a whole, I heard about the whole Zep Tepi thing. So I have a whole bit prepared for that, guys. We're going to talk about it. Don't you worry.
There has been no exploration in the way that Jimmy Corsetti says.
Jimmy, this conspiracy theory that you do have is wrong.
Some people are saying the sound's not good, so I will turn it up. Let me know if that is better.
Completely. We are not hiding anything.
To his legion of admirers, Dr. Zahi Hawass is the world's top expert on Egypt's mighty pyramids, and for good reason. Throughout an illustrious career, Dr. Hawass has served as the Chief Inspector of the Great Pyramids, Director General of the Giza Monuments, and the Secretary General of the Supreme Council.
Is that any better? I can crank it up even more. Here, I've done it again. Let me know.
Of Antiquities in Egypt. His book, Giza and the Pyramids, is considered the definitive account. But to his critics, he's an academic gatekeeper, an elitist of Egyptology, who is preventing others from interrogating the real truth about how, when, and why the pyramids were built. Many in Joe Rogan.
He's not even in charge of things anymore. How can he gatekeep something when he's not the minister? Oh my gosh. No good. There's like conflict on the audio, so I'll turn it up even more. I just don't want people telling me that it's too loud. So we'll go and try this. And then just if I keep needing to go up, just let me know. I can turn it up and turn it up and turn it up. Well, there is a limit, but...
His audience felt that way after his appearance earlier this year.
Most of the information that's written on pyramids are wrong.
Most of it?
Most of it.
In archaeology books?
In archaeology books.
Really?
Except me and Mark Leaner.
You guys are the only ones that have it right?
Because have been working in Giza for the last 57 years of my life. I excavated every bit of sand.
Well, in this special edition of Uncensored, Dr. Zahi Hawass will join me to discuss his incredible work, and we'll be joined by 2 of his most high-profile critics from the alternative archaeology community who say the truth about the pyramids.
Oh, alternative archaeology community. Oh, man, okay.
Has yet to be revealed. And we'll bring...
Oh, I have so many feelings about news outlets like this, giving these people legitimacy because they're good for clicks. It's just, oh, man.
Those 2 gentlemen in shortly. But first of all, Dr. Hawass, first of all, welcome to Uncensored. Let me just ask you, first of all, what was your reaction to the reaction you got when you appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast? Because a lot of it was very negative.
I bet you that he doesn't care because Zahi Hawass he doesn't care about his critics. Like, he doesn't care about people that disagree with his opinion. He cares about Egyptian archaeology. But that's my prediction of what he's going to say.
No, when I give any talk about pyramids, I expect the person who interviewed me to read about pyramids or to read about our work. I am sorry, when I did this last interview, I didn't see that Mr. Rogan did really read anything that we published. And that's why I was trying to refer to our excavation, to our book, and so. But I'm sorry that he said that this show was the worst he did, and after that he said it was good. It's his opinion, but I do, when I talk about evidence of how the Egyptian built the pyramids, I present all the archaeological evidence that I do have. In the other side, I don't see any evidence that anyone can give me to say that pyramids built by so-and-so. And that was my point. My point that I have been excavating in Egypt for the last 57 years. I excavated every piece of sand at Giza Plateau. Then when I present a theory or any idea, I present it with evidence. I'm not talking about something on air. No, I'm talking about what we have been discovered at Giza for the last 50 years.
But let me ask you, if you don't mind me just quibbling about one thing, have you really examined every grain of sand at Giza?
We did. You know, I have to tell you.
How many grains are there?
I mean, this is just like, he's trying to get his point across, in my opinion. He is trying to get his point across by, trying to get across that they've been very thorough. But I'm going to point out that, yes, okay, he's worked there for 57 years and he's done a lot of excavations and he's discovered some really important stuff like the tombs of the pyramid workers. That's a Zahi Hawass discovery, like one of his projects. He's not excavated every single grain of sand at Giza because, if we're going to take this literally, because Giza's been excavated for over 100 years and they still haven't found everything. They're still finding stuff there on a regular basis. He's been on TV shows where they've recently found stuff and they're continuing to do work. They're continuing to do projects, excavating the cemeteries and the areas around the pyramids. He had a whole documentary on Netflix looking for the Pyramid of Huni, which is one of the, I think, third or fourth dynasty kings, who we don't have a pyramid for, but we think he probably built one, but it's probably not in good enough condition that it survived. So he was looking for the foundations or any remnants of it. So yeah, so his wording here is not going over really well. It didn't go over again well in the Joe Rogan show, because what he's trying to get across is that they've been very thorough and he's been working there for a really long time, and so he knows what he's talking about. But yes, the words that he's choosing to convey that I do not think are the best, because someone who's a journalist like Piers is going to, and journalists like to deal a lot of the time in absolutes. So of course he's going to call him on this idea that I've dug every single grain of sand, because Zahi's also probably referring to a wider collective project rather than just he himself personally. Anyway, there's a couple questions in the chat. Opinion on Graham Hancock. I don't think that he's correct in what he thinks. What I read about him, he is a journalist with a background in sociology who did some psychedelics and came up with a lot of his theories and figured out that if he writes books on them, they will sell. And so he promotes it. Whether or not he truly believes it, I don't really know. But he's never stepped foot on an archaeological site. He's never actually gone and done the work. And considering the amount of money that people like Graham Hancock and some of these other alt people probably have in comparison to some archaeological projects, I would think that they'd have enough followers to be able to get funding to do an archaeological project to look into their claims. So I don't really know why they're not trying to pursue that more stringently if they're really serious about it. I don't know Indiana Jones. No, he's not a fictional person. came close. Well, I almost was an extra on the Indiana Jones 5 movie when it filmed in Glasgow because I live in Edinburgh. But I applied for the wrong film and ended up being an extra on The Flash, which filmed a week after it in Glasgow. But yeah, that's my fun story. Yeah, well, inconclusive results don't come from that self-taught crowd because they don't actually do any experiments. They just read stuff. They don't actually go out and look for the evidence themselves. Yeah. History is more interesting than saying aliens super ancient. Yeah, I very much agree with you. We're not going to get anything new. Giza Plateau is hollow like a sponge. Cock is a tool. Who built the pyramids? The Egyptians built the pyramids. I think that's pretty clear that that's my stance on this channel. I have a whole video that I've done on the evolution of Egyptian pyramid building, as well as a whole video on the Great Pyramid and how they built that, and then a whole video on everything else that we found at Giza that's not the actual pyramids because it's a gigantic cemetery. So you should go watch those. Hancock light to the top of the... No, okay. Visiting a place as a tourist does not count as archaeological work. What I'm talking about is going and doing an archaeological project, putting a spade, a trowel, a pick into the ground and actually looking for the archaeological evidence. Not visiting a place as a tourist. Like, anybody can do that. Archaeology, oh, lovely. I actually have friends who did archaeology at St. Andrews.
I discovered west of the Great Pyramid about 20 tombs. One of them mentioned in the Wadi al-Jarf papyri that talking about building the pyramid by someone whose name was Mirror. We found the tombs of the pyramid builders at Giza. Big, major, important discovery. We found the tombs in the upper cemetery for the technicians with titles in hieroglyphic. Each title has to do with building the pyramid. The lower cemetery for the workmen who moved the stones. And next to this, Mark Leaner excavated an area for sorting salted fish, the bakery for making bread, the houses and the villages that the workmen lived. Then we do, I mean, I can't talk to you. This is what I'm doing in the States now. This is top number 25 for me in my lecture in America, that really I'm presenting to the people all the evidence that we do have to say that Khufu built this pyramid. And this pyramid did not appear at once. No.
But
Not anybody can climb to the top of a pyramid because they're not allowed. Not because I can't physically do it. I mean, I don't have a giant TV, I don't have a TV show that's going to pay money to let me do that, unfortunately. I mean, maybe in future. Who wants to start Let's Get Rachel to the Top of the Pyramid fundraiser? I'll do it. If people will give me the money to do it, to be able to get the permits, I'll do it.
The key recent discovery that I believe you've made public, is that it's always been traditionally assumed that the pyramids were built by 100,000 slaves. But you've done some research recently.
That is such an old concept. Like, that's been debunked for ages.
That you believe contradicts that theory. Your team unearthed tombs near the pyramids, you just touched on that suggest they were in fact built by highly skilled, paid laborers under a strict regime and were not actually slaves, because the slaves, you've argued, wouldn't have had formal burial in close proximity to the pyramids. So, A, just explain that to me, and B, explain why this is such a significant discovery in your opinion.
Okay. When we discovered the tombs of the pyramid builders, this discovery, based on the names that we found inside the upper cemetery, I can tell you that pyramids were built by the ancient Egyptian, because all the names that we found were Egyptian names. The second important thing, that there were no slaves. If there were slaves, the workmen will never be buried in the shadow of the pyramids. If they were slaves, they will never prepare their tombs for eternity like kings and queens. I want to tell you one important thing. There is a big difference between slavery in America in the past and Europe and in Egypt. In America and Europe, you can own a person. In ancient Egypt, you can have a servant working for you. Because I found one tomb west of the Great Pyramid. It's for a priest. His name is Kai. And at the entrance of his tomb, he's saying the following: I built my tomb. I hired workmen, sculptors, and artisans. I paid them beer and bread. I made them to be happy. And that's really an evidence to tell you that we have to understand the meaning of slavery in ancient Egypt. There was no slavery in ancient Egypt.
But that, I mean, it does seem to me, if you don't mind me saying, Dr. Hawass.
I mean, like, there was slavery, but not like chattel slavery, like how they think of it in the U.S. Like, the U.S. took slavery to like a whole new level when they did that to the people of Africa. It's interesting as well because I would love to do more research. Maybe it's a good video to talk about. Let me know if you think so. So he's talking about slaves may have at some point been partially involved in some of the building of the pyramids, but the vast majority of the workforce of the pyramids, the evidence doesn't show that they were enslaved peoples. It shows that they were Egyptians. There was the theory that Mark Lenner and Zahi Hawass has is that they had the way that Egyptian economy worked back then was that it was the vast majority of people were farmers along the banks of the Nile, and the Nile floods for a couple months of the year, and the farmers are just like sitting around and they can't really do anything because their fields are underwater. So at that time, the state would basically employ them to come and employ them by way of, this is how they kind of paid their tax, because they didn't have like a monetary system like we do nowadays. It doesn't just come off your paycheck. So they would pay their tax to the state basically in labor, but they would go to these construction sites and build for the king and build these monuments. This isn't something that's just limited to the pyramids at Giza. It went on after that as well. And then, so they would have provided the bulk of the actual manual workforce, the people doing like the heavy lifting stuff you don't need specialist training for. And then you would have had a smaller the argument is that you would have had a smaller year-round specialized task force like stonemasons and engineers, architects, etc., that would have been working on the project year-round, so that once they had the massive influx of people during the year, they could get, a lot of the stone lifting and carving and all that kind of stuff, stonemasons, etc., getting all the stone ready to go up. And then, so that's the basic theory of how it works. That's the theory that I think makes the most personal sense. Sorry, I can't drop everything and go to Egypt this week. That would be nice. I would actually love to go. I was saying to some of my friends that we need to like organize a YouTube archaeology party for the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum, which has been pushed back from June, I think October, November. I would love to go to the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum. Put those wishes into the ears of whoever's in charge of that. But I can't just drop everything. I have a 10-month-old baby at home, and I can't just leave her at the moment. Or else if I was a different time in my life, I would be up for it. They weren't just fed beer and bread. They were fed also like meat. What they found in the like pyramid town that Zahi Hawass briefly mentioned was like, they were actually fed like high, like elite, like above average food. They got like cows and geese and fish and all that kind of stuff, and they were fed at the expense of the state. So it's basically like you're it's ironically very close to how a lot of archaeology works nowadays, where you travel to the archaeology while you're away, Your housing is provided and paid for by the company that you work for, and you're given subsistence money to pay for all of your food and meals. So sometimes that's going out to a restaurant, sometimes it's buying it and cooking it in a kitchen and wherever you're staying. But that's essentially how it worked in ancient Egypt as well. And there might have been a small amount of slaves involved. Khufu's father, Snofru, is recorded as having done military campaigns into, I can't remember if it was Nubia or Libya, a neighboring state, and capturing a bunch of people to help with the workforce for his projects. So he probably used slaves, but we don't have any records of Khufu doing the same thing. So, yep.
You know, I listen, I bow to your far greater expertise than me. You've written a 1,000-page book on Giza alone. So, you know, I'm not going to try and quibble with you about the history of the pyramids or anything. I would simply say it seems to me more logical, and correct me if I'm wrong here, more logical that, yes, I totally concede that a lot of the local artisans and others would be brought in on this incredible project. But is it not really stretching credibility that they would not have also used what we would categorize as slaves in some capacity? Because the work was so onerous, so tough, so hard, and it would take 100,000 or more people. Were there really 100,000 artisans prepared to do that kind of heavy?
It's not 100,000 people. Like, it's tens of thousands that they think did this, not hundreds of thousands. The population of Egypt probably wasn't big enough to support a 100,000 person workforce. Also, here's the thing, is he's saying, oh, well, could it have possibly been slaves? I mean, we don't have a time machine. We can't say for sure. There were absolutely no slaves involved in building the Great Pyramids ever. The evidence that we have, and this is what I want to emphasize, the evidence that we have is that the evidence of the people that we have found so far that have been involved with the project shows that those people were not slaves. So we have not found any evidence that slaves were involved. So you can't really say slaves were definitely probably involved at some point when we actually haven't found any evidence of it, until they find evidence saying these are the graves of slaves who built the pyramids. You can't say that they were absolutely involved or that it doesn't stretch. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's no evidence for it. So, yeah, I don't know.
Duty work, or is it not more likely that it was a mix of the two?
The number of the workmen that were involved in construction of the pyramid based on our excavation were only 10,000 workmen. And we have to understand that the Egyptian, before they began to build the pyramid, they had to make a big type of administration to cut a canal, to cut the harbor, for bringing stones from Aswan, from Torah, to set the workmen area. And this is why the 100,000 workmen were set by Herodotus, the father of the history, who came to Egypt in the middle of the 5th century BC. And Herodotus used to hear from guides. Then there is not any evidence of the 100,000. But we do believe, based on our work and our work on the discovery of the tombs of the pyramid builders and the workmen installation, that the workmen were only 10,000 workmen.
But I find that, I'm not questioning your research. I'm simply raising a quizzical eye. For example, the World Cup football recently took place.
I mean, then invent a time machine, Piers. Like, you're asking people to invent evidence and convince you of something that you clearly, are, not wanting to be convinced of. You're just going to pick apart anything that they say. Like, I don't... What can you say to convince him that it was that thing? Like, this is the evidence that we have. You don't believe the evidence. There's not really something that anyone's going to be able to say to convince you otherwise. Does that make any sense? Yeah. None of the evidence so far that we've uncovered shows that they were slaves. So, yeah, that's, I mean, like I said, that doesn't mean that, slaves weren't involved in some way. Maybe sometimes they were bringing water, but were they the bulk of the workforce? Were they half of the workforce? The evidence doesn't show that. It was probably a much smaller amount of them, as far as we can tell. And yeah, there's actually no evidence. But until we have a time machine, we really can't know absolutely 100% for sure.
In Qatar, I went out there for it, and they built a number of stadiums.
Also, comparing modern construction to ancient construction is something that infuriates me, because we are so spoiled by like the amount of knowledge that we have and the machinery that we have, and also we're so lazy because we have all these machines that can do all of these things for us. So comparing how we build things in modern day with everything that we know about physics, engineering, like how to build secure buildings, etc., and the machinery that we get to use, like it is nowhere near the same kind of experience as it would have been back then. So to compare the two modern things, I think is just, yeah, it's just, it doesn't work.
Over a few years. But I think they had around 10,000 people building those football stadiums. There's no comparison in the complexity and size of these stadiums to the pyramids, and they had all the benefit of modern technology to help them. So this idea that you could have the same number of people that built the World Cup stadiums for Qatar, and you could do the pyramids with them back in ancient times, it doesn't seem plausible to me. You've probably seen the viral videos of a North Korean phone that secretly takes screenshots every 5 minutes.
Oh, we're going to skip that.
No. One thing I want to tell you, and this is what I'm saying always in my lectures. I'm saying, if you stood in front of the Great Pyramid today, and you look at it, you will never believe that any human being can build it. Why? Because you don't know. And number two,
yes, someone did mention here, also, Zahi Hawass mentioned it as well. The slave theory comes from the Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt 2,000 years after the pyramids were built. So a very, very long time afterwards, with absolutely no, as far as we know, like remaining primary sources from which he drew his conclusions from. And something I also want to point out at him that nobody's mentioned is that he was Greek. He was and from like the pinnacle of Greek snobbery. I don't know what else to call it, but like Greeks had a very high opinion of themselves in antiquity and the achievements of their civilization. And they were in this whole thing where they're all about democracy, etc. And they look really down. They're against tyrants. They used to be ruled by tyrants, but they threw them out, and etc., etc. So then Herodotus comes to Egypt and he sees this massive monument being built for a king, for a tyrant, for an evil person in his like cultural history and what he like in his culture. And so of course his logical thing is like, oh, this must have been an evil person who forced slaves to build this and all these people died, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, like Herodotus started this entire myth, and it's just gone on for 2,500 years, but it is not correct. He was not there when they were built it. He did not know.
we have to understand one thing, that the construction of the pyramid was a national project of the whole nation. The 3 million who lived in Egypt in that time, in the time of Khufu, participated in building the pyramid to make the king as a god. Then can you believe moving an obelisk from Aswan to Hatshepsut temple?
It's incredible.
It took 7 months. It took 7 months. And this can be, it's depicted in the temple of Hatshepsut, showing how they cut this obelisk, how they transported the obelisk on boats. It explains how they worked for 7 months because they want to make the king as a god. And this is why the households in Upper and Lower Egypt, all of them participated in sending.
Great point made here by someone else in the chat that ancient Greeks had slaves, and very much slavery was like a big part of their economy. So it was really feasible to them that slaves would have been used to make that project. That's a really great point. Thank you for pointing that out.
Workforce and food. to help the king. In return, they did not pay taxes. Then the organization of building the pyramid, as we can see, the major problem that people look at Khufu pyramid only. They don't look what happened before and what happened after. If you see how they started, you see there is no gap in the Egyptian history.
It's a great point to plug my Evolution of the Egyptian Pyramids video, which I put out earlier this month, and I did a ton of work making that covers the entire history of Egyptian pyramid building, from mud brick mastabas, which were single story, solid kind of like rectangular structures, to step pyramids, to true-sided pyramids, to after Giza pyramids during the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom pyramids, New Kingdom pyramids, personal pyramids built by workers at Deir el-Bahri, and then Nubian pyramids as well. There is a whole history of it, so you should definitely check that video out if you want to learn more about it.
At all, to make anyone to think there is something we could argue about.
Okay, well, look, before I bring in the other two panel members, I want to play you a clip. This is from when I had the world-famous Graham Hancock on Uncensored, who said this: what do you really want to achieve? What is the goal?
Most of all, what I would like to achieve is for archaeologists to engage with my work without smearing me, without calling me a racist and a white supremacist and a misogynist and an anti-Semite. All of these words were applied to me.
So I guess my question there, Dr. Hawass, is, do you have an objection to people like Graham Hancock having their own theories about the pyramids because they're not actually from the Middle East, because they're white guys from England?
It has nothing to do with the fact of where they're from. It has everything to do with the stuff that they're spouting has absolutely no evidence behind it, and none of them are actually qualified in the field to be writing on this topic, in my opinion.
At all. First, you have to understand that Egyptology, you have hundreds of American Egyptologists and French and German, who are not only the Egyptian Egyptologists. And by the way, I debated Graham Hancock and John Anthony West and Robert Bofal many times in many places. I met Graham in Egypt. I invited him for dinner. And I talked to him. And I ask Graham all the time, if you do have evidence of what you believe on the date of the pyramids and moving stones, you don't have any evidence. If he give me one single evidence, I will accept that. You know, I won't tell you about moving stones. We do have a scene from the Old Kingdom talking about moving stones. In the Middle Kingdom, a statue, 60 tons, 170 Egyptian dragging the statue. The Hatshepsut obelisk, all this can tell us how the Egyptians
let me ask you, let me ask you, why do we not, given we've got technology these days which can go incredibly deep, why don't we just go under the pyramids and go right deep, right down, and really get to the bottom of this? What's the objection to doing that?
Structural integrity of the monument?
I don't, but you have to understand, we are working right now 2 major expeditions. One from England, working under me, and one called Scan Pyramids. We are using the most sophisticated techniques to understand and to discover the voice inside the pyramid. Discoveries that we revealed until now, many of it, and there is others we'll reveal later. Then we are not objecting, but who should work in the pyramids? You have to bring scientists from a museum, from a university, but you cannot bring an amateur from New York or London to come and work in scientific.
Okay, well, that's quite interesting, because what they say, of course, is that it's a bit of a carve-up and that you guys are the pyramid establishment and you don't like outsiders because you don't want them contradicting your narrative. So look, let's bring in the other two guests. Joining us now, two independent researchers and investigators of lost ancient history. Jimmy Corsetti, the host of the...
Like, oh man, lost ancient history. I mean, that's all that we're looking for. Like, that's what archaeology is.
Right Insight YouTube channel. And from the debunking channel, Dan Richards. Welcome to both of you. We've had you both on before, of course. Jimmy Corsetti, what would you like to say to Dr. Hawass about his recent revelation from his team's research that they believe the pyramids were not built by slaves, and there weren't 100,000, there were about 10,000, and they were artisans of the time?
To be honest, well, let me first say, Piers, thank you for having me back on, and Zahi, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. There's a few things I take issue with what he had said. First of all, this Scan Pyramids project, that initial discovery was back in 2016, and it was corroborated into a published study in 2017. Well, when you look from 2016 to 2025, that's 9 years ago. That's almost a decade. And I'm trying to understand why we wouldn't have drilled a half-inch diameter hole and sent in a endoscope camera into this hidden chamber. Because let's not forget that the Great Pyramid of Giza is arguably the most mysterious and debated structure in all of human history. We don't know.
It's not most debated. I mean, oh man. Okay. I'll let him finish and then I'll give my opinion.
Know exactly how it was constructed. And in fact, how it was constructed is one of the most debated topics. Another debated topic is whether it was actually built to be a tomb for the pharaohs, because after all, we never found any mummy.
They weren't called pharaohs at that point in history. They were like, just saying.
In any Egyptian pyramid ever. So with those two significant points of debate, we could squash those debates by simply going in and exploring it. So I guess I have a question for Dr. Hawass at this time, which is, why haven't we drilled into that hidden chamber? When will we do it? And the third question is, has it already been done so in secret?
What?
Oh my gosh, that's just way to plant the answer that you want into the question. Anyway, so first off, he's talking about Scan Pyramids. So, Scan Pyramids project is a project that is trying to use non-invasive survey to look at the Great Pyramid. So there's obviously, in case you weren't aware, archaeology is a destructive process. Once we excavate something, it is destroyed. It is forever gone from the physical record. The difference between archaeology and looting is that we will be doing recording as we excavate, and then we're basically recreating whatever it is that we've destroyed in the paper, digital, archival record, if you will. So there's a lot of advancement has been made recently in these fields of non-invasive surveys, and there's a variety of different technologies that you can use for it. Probably the most common one is geophysical survey. This is not what it's doing, but the closest equivalent to what this kind of stuff is trying to do is effectively X-ray things. But they're not you're not able to X-ray stone. Surprise, surprise. Why are they doing this at the Great Pyramid? Why are they not drilling into it? Because it's the seventh wonder of the world, and it's the job as the Egyptians, as its custodians, to keep it preserved for the future. And as much as these people want to promote the idea that, you know, their thinking and their opposing views are the quote unquote the opposing views of the majority or whatever, they're not. They do represent a minority viewpoint, a very vocal viewpoint, but a minority viewpoint nonetheless. And the thing with something like the pyramids is, if you want to do something like damage it, which is what you'll be doing if you drill it, you need to have a rock solid hypothesis as to what you're going to find on the other side, and really, really good evidence for what you're going to find on the other side to justify it. And these people just, like, they don't have that. Like, I just don't think that it's there, or, well, this might be there, but, like, it's just okay, how do I break this down further? I'm sorry, guys. I'm on very few hours of sleep right now because I got to sleep late last night and my baby woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning for an hour. So if I'm seeming a bit jumbled, that is why. The Scan Pyramids project is one that's officially sanctioned by Egypt, and they're working there, and they're using something that's called muon tomography, which is cosmic rays to look at it. And very interestingly, why this is being taken seriously, but not the more recent SAR scans that are like, oh, there's pillars underneath the pyramids, etc., is because those teams were all university funded projects and academics using similar but different pieces of technology. And there were 3 different teams working in 3 different spots, 3 different pieces of technology, all came to the same conclusion. that there were these voids there. So that in and of itself, these are all independent teams. So they all came to the same conclusion. That is the kind of evidence that you want to look for. And even though they have that, and to be clear here, they've actually found 2 voids. They haven't just found one. So they found one that's over top the like main entrance, and then they found the bigger one that's over the Grand Gallery. They have inserted an endoscopic camera into a crack and verified that the one over the entrance exists. So they were able to find a crack, they were able to get a camera up there, and they were able to have a look around that room that was empty. It was on the news a couple of years ago. I suspect what Jimmy is referring to is the bigger void over the Grand Gallery. And yeah, they've probably not put anything into it. We'll see what Zahi has to say, because to be fair, like 10 years ago, we didn't even know how to scan the pyramids with cosmic rays. Who knows how small cameras are going to get in the next 10, 20 years. The pyramids have been waiting around to be explored for 4,500 years, a couple more decades waiting for the technology to get small enough that we'd be able to insert like an insect-sized camera to go through the cracks and find this void. Worth waiting for instead of damaging the pyramid, and these guys are just going to have to wait until that happens, in my personal opinion. Yeah. Let's see if we have anything in the chat. Would have been able to get away with this. And yeah, it's so the SAR, by contrast, the SAR stuff that's saying, oh, it's underneath the pyramids, that project, whatever you want to call it, is being run by one team who have entirely invented the technology and the software and have not correctly published their methods anywhere. And and 2 of the people on that team are well-known purveyors of these like alternate theory, like advanced civilization theories. So nobody's been able to independently verify that their technology works the way that they say it does. They say that they've been able to do that, but again, they're the only ones saying that. There needs to be people besides them saying, yes, this stuff works the way that they're saying it does. They've not released any details as to how it works, probably because they have a patent pending for it. But also they have this whole thing where they feed their results into AI algorithms to generate their images, and they say that, well, we fed this information into the AI algorithm, this is what is given to us, and the AI can't be wrong, which is a complete misunderstanding of how artificial intelligence models work. And how I know that is because my husband is a specialist in machine learning, and when I talked to him about it, he was just like, yeah, he was like, that is a complete misunderstanding. Like, artificial intelligence is built by us. So, like, yes. And they also haven't released details on which artificial intelligence model they used, what questions they were putting to it, how they framed the thing. So, like, nobody's been able to double check their work. So, yeah, you can't take it seriously until they're going to actually meet standards. This is the thing that these people don't seem to understand, is that when it comes to something like the Great Pyramid, which is the seventh, the only wonder of the ancient world that is still standing, and is a UNESCO World Heritage Monument. It's something that we need to preserve for the future, and we need to protect it. And in order to do that, if people want to be doing this kind of invasive, destructive research, like, you need to meet a very, 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 very high standard to be able to justify doing that. And these people haven't done it. And I think that's the point that I was trying to get across.
Wow, great questions. All right, Dr. Hawass, your response.
Now, number one, you have to understand, until today is in July 2025, we still have the scan pyramid team are working. You know that they found behind the main entrance the corridor, and they found above the Grand Gallery the big void. And the Egyptian team the English team that working under me, they found some important voids. And in archaeology, you have to be patient. You have to study how are you going to drill, or the new techniques that they're using. The new techniques that they're using, like ultrasound and infrared, penetrating radar, all of this, you do not need to drill anymore. You can see what's behind a wall, because the English team from London and Sean, who's working for me, they found a void behind the northern entrance of the Queen Chamber with hieroglyphic signs. We are studying now how can we approach all these voids. But you have to understand one thing: we are not making anything secret. We advertise everything that we discover. We found above the King Chamber, in the 5 chambers, relieving chambers, 2 more names of the gangs who built the pyramids. And we found year 13 of Khufu's reign. And this is what I'm talking about in my lecture in the States now. This is my number 25 lecture that I am publishing, announcing to the public everything that we discover inside the Great Pyramid. Nothing is secret.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to have that clarified. If you're stressed about back taxes, can I just ask you?
Oh my gosh. Sorry guys, that just went on a huge rant. Okay, I'll have to cut that out later. Where did I? Okay. I have to remember everything that I just said. This is what, like I said, I'm sorry. I'm operating on a very little amount of sleep. What was I saying? Okay. His point about academia takes a long time to publish is entirely valid. There is a reason that like archaeology is a very slow process, which very much goes against what we're used to in modern day in terms of everything happens now. It happens right away. Things are published. They're on the internet. I click to the next thing, etc., etc. Archaeology doesn't work like that. It is a very long, drawn out process. Things take decades. Things take lifetimes to excavate and publish. The site that I worked on in Jordan had its last year of excavating in 2012, and they've only just started publishing the first book of the final publication of everything that they found at the site. And this is 13, 15, 14 years later. It's a long time. It takes ages to go through this stuff sometimes, especially more so somewhere like the pyramids where you want to be sure about what you are saying. There's nothing worse than publishing something prematurely, right away when you found it, and being like, oh, we found this. And then you have to turn around later and be like, ooh, actually, no, that's not right. So this is why some of this stuff hasn't been published. Some of it might be being kept back because they want to sensationalize it or they want to wait until a certain time. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be published at all. It's just something that takes a long time sometimes. And yeah, that's just how archaeology works. So yeah, I was just getting distracted because I was on a tangent. So apologies that I wasn't looking at the chat and didn't see that it was muted. But yeah, that's basically the gist of what I was saying. I'm absolutely on fire. Sorry. Does ChatGPT read lips? No, it doesn't. What else was I talking about? Did I mute myself after scan pyramids? I think so. It was just a couple minutes. I mean, give me a break, guys. Jeez. Anyway, I will not mute myself this time. So if you hear me drinking my water, that's all on you. And we'll move on to the next section.
You just on a personal level about one thing that's constantly put out there as to whether you believe this is true, that the Great Pyramid of Giza is claimed to have a correlation with the Earth's circumference and polar radius based on the idea that multiplying the pyramid's perimeter by 43,200 equals the Earth's equatorial circumference, and multiplying its height by 43,200 equals the Earth's polar radius. So that this number, 43,200, is also related to the precession of the Earth's axis. Is that all true?
You know, I'm not objecting any theory, but you have to understand, every day I hear a theory about a pyramid. Sometimes
but
I
that one is,
answer
I mean,
them.
that
You
one
know,
is an
for the last
amazing
3 months.
theory. If that theory is true, it is mind-blowing.
I mean, why can't people just do the measurements then? Like, we know what the circumference of the Earth is and all that kind of stuff. We know how big the pyramid was. Do the math yourself and see if it works. I don't know why they're asking him.
Do you think it's true?
No one send it to me. I will study it and I will.
Have you not heard it?
It's the same number on the Sumerian kings list. 43,200 has been seen in ancient
Oh my gosh, guys, there's such things as a coincidence.
history inexplicably. And the Sumerians are the earliest document human civilization we have, and that number ties in with them. Real quick, I'm sorry, but Zahi, you didn't answer my prior question. Have you guys gone in and explored that hidden chamber? And if not, when will you be doing so? Because to be honest, we could do it by the end of the weekend. It's not difficult to drill a half-inch diameter hole and send in an endoscope here. So have we been in there? And if not, when are we going, brother?
I'll wave to this guy acting like he's an authority on these things. Oh, it's not that hard. Yeah. Like, we have the technology to do it, but like, there's other things to consider by the fact of how quote-unquote easy it is to do.
I need to know. This will answer all of our questions. If you want to squash debate involving, you know, the conspiracy theorists and everything, all we got to do is go in and look. We know where it's at. We could drill a hole. This is doable.
Yeah, I agree. Why can't you just go in?
I answered your question, and I said.
So you're saying we have not gone in and explored that chamber. Is that correct?
Can you please let me to answer you?
Yes.
I already answered you, and I said, all these voids that we found, the Scan Pyramid team and the English team, right now, we are discussing and studying how we are going to get in. You cannot just go in directly like this. You have to make a study. You have to research it. You have to decide, as a scientist, when can you do it? And when we can use it,
It's been 9 years.
we do that, we can...
Yeah,
9 years,
come on.
brother.
I mean, look, we sent...
Like, how long it's been is irrelevant. Like I said, I think I was saying that, maybe I missed this. This is when I muted myself. Like, the pyramids have been around for 4,500 years. And they can wait a few decades for you to figure out the least invasive way to go into it. Probably one of the reasons that they're waiting so long to try and figure out how to do it is because they don't want to damage the pyramid any further. It is a monument. It needs to be preserved. And anytime that they want to do something like that, you need to have standards that you have to meet. As I've said before, I think I muted myself. If you think at the rate of where technology is today versus where it was a decade ago, they're miles apart. So really, what's the harm in trying to wait a little bit longer, maybe until the point where we get to like being able to use nanotechnology, or we have like a camera that's as small as a tiny little beetle bug, and then you can just send it up through the cracks in the pyramid without having to worry about damage it to get the recording. These people want these answers now, but ultimately, guys, nobody's going to die if we don't investigate the great void of the pyramid. Let's just put this all into perspective here. Like, it's not impacting anybody's life in a serious, like, life-threatening way. Nobody's going to die if we don't investigate this next year, et cetera, et cetera. And to be honest, it works better for all these people that we haven't investigated it anyway, because it means they can still keep making videos about why it's not been investigated and the fact that it's not been proven yet. So really, it works in their favor that it's not been done. Just saying.
No, that's
years.
We sent rockets to the...
Wrong.
Hang on,
you
Dr.
are wrong.
Dr.
I'm
Hawass,
sorry.
we have sent rockets to the moon since the 60s. I mean, the idea we can get to the moon in space rockets, but we can't get inside a chamber of a tomb in a pyramid. I mean, come on.
Do you want me to answer now or still any talk? I told you what we found inside the Great Pyramid. And I told you, this year, 2025, is the year that we are studying. How can we enter inside these voids? And he said 9 years. Yes, it can take more than 9 years. This is the pyramid of Egypt. This is something valuable. This is one of the 7 wonders of the world. Yep. You just can go and boom and drill like this. You have to be sure that this drill is important to discover something.
Okay.
But it's not 9 years. We have been working since 9 years until today.
I hear you. Let me bring in Dan Richards. Dan,
I'll also just say that, like, there's this whole thing, like, Egypt. So the majority of quote-unquote major archaeological discoveries in Egypt, like we're saying Tutankhamun's tomb, etc., have been made historically by Westerners, by non-Egyptians. And Egypt, I can tell you, Egypt is 100% Zahi Hawass. I think he even said this in his Huni documentary on Netflix. There is nothing that they would like better than to be able to make a major discovery like a room full of treasure inside the Great Pyramid, or like a vast underground complex underneath it, etc., etc. There is nothing that they would love more to be able to find something like that and credit it to Egyptian archaeologists and their work, etc., and reclaim their heritage in that way, and be a part of the major conversation, the major discoveries, and the names that go down in history of the people who have made these kinds of discoveries. So there is absolutely no, and not to mention all the tourism money that would bring back to them. There is no reason for them to not want these things to be done. I just had to put that out there.
what would you like to say to Dr. Hawass? Because there's been a kind of raging conflict between what people see as the establishment Egyptologists who have kind of access and control, and then all you guys who would probably love to get that kind of access and control but don't have it. What do you view about what he's been saying?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Piers. It's good to meet you, Zahi. I have a quick... when you were on Joe Rogan, you said that you didn't know what Zep Tepi was. And I figured I would give you a chance. I would imagine as the premier Egyptologist in the world, you do know the Egyptian creation myth. Would you mind just explaining it to us real quick so that to kind of vindicate yourself and show the world you do know what Zep Tepi is?
He's assumed... Okay, before we get into this, I'm going to put in the chat, I'm going to put a poll. Who knows what Zep Tepi is? Because he's saying that the world wants to know what Zep Tepi is. I don't think the world knows what it is. I'm gonna put a poll. Or have you heard of Zep? Do you know what Zep Tepi is? I would just like to know out of my viewers or the people watching this, who actually knows what this is, and then we'll talk about it.
No, I mean, I know about the ancient Egyptian creation, but maybe I don't know this term. But what I'm saying, what this has to do with what we are discussing now.
Oh, it's very important because, I mean, it's the ancient Egyptian creation myth involves the primeval mound, right? And this is a symbolic big exactly. This is something you're going to see all over the ancient world. So that term Zep Tepi is you see it in Egyptian without the vowels, but it's the Egyptian creation myth. So it's kind of important. It's a very important lens to use when you're interpreting these artifacts. So when you were on Joe Rogan and he asked you what it was, and you said you didn't know what it was, that. So honestly, if you wouldn't mind, it's a good chance to vindicate yourself. No,
I teach the Egyptian creation, but I'm saying this term that you're talking about, I never heard of it. Maybe it is not in. I never heard it in the world of Egyptology. Maybe it's between the others. But I can tell you about creation, how the Egyptians created this world. But I don't understand why this has to do with the pyramid now that we're discussing.
Dan, let me ask you just on the wider point of the recent discovery by Dr. Hawass, or the claim from the research, that there were no slaves involved in...
Right, okay, so they're moving on to a different topic. So now it's time to talk about Zep Tepi. I have prepped for this. So this is really... I think some of this is a bit of a language barrier thing, and it's kind of, I find actually like a kind of really interesting case study into like how a lot of this alt history, pseudo-archaeology stuff works. Because they're using this term and they're talking about it like, it's a well-known thing, which the chat is currently indicating that it is not. Well, 60% of people have never heard of it, and Zahi Hawass doesn't know it. When I first heard it on the Joe Rogan show, I'm fully okay to say, I was like, why are they asking him about a site in Turkey? Tepi is very much a word that's used in association with sites in Turkey. And they're talking about it like it's the same, but it is not. So what is Zep Tepi? Somebody's talked about it a little bit in the chat already first. So Zep Tepi is 2 Egyptian words that are mentioned in the pyramid texts, which come from the 5th dynasty pyramids in the Old Kingdom, which immediately follow the 4th dynasty pyramids at Giza. And it is a phrase that literally translates to first time or first occasion. And it is in reference to a mythical period of time of creation. And specifically, I think it's actually meant to refer to the point in time in which, in the Egyptian creation myth, we go from everything is chaos to then there is order. And like the establishment of order comes into being. Out of the chaos rises the primordial mound, also known as the Benben. And it's something that, so Zep Tepi is I don't know if Zep Tepi is exactly like how they actually would have said it, because it's a different, it's spelled like, it's not, there are no vowels in how we translate Egyptian words. So some of it's a bit, guesswork. But they're using it like it's a title, like that's the title of the Egyptian creation myth. And that's where I think it's getting confusing. There is no definitive title to the Egyptian creation myth. There are many different versions of it, depending on which city you were in and which gods were in charge of that city, et cetera, et cetera. But it's something that's really been seized upon by this alternative community. They've picked this really like niche term and word and like cherry picked it out, and they argue that this first time they've linked it to the Osiris myth, and suggest they think that it represents a historical period of around 10,000 years ago when there was, guess what, an ancient ant civilization in Egypt that built the pyramids. So, and it's really interesting, I think, because it's like, they use it, like someone was kind of saying, as a bit of a gotcha thing, because it's a really niche term and it technically does exist in Egyptian mythology, but it's not a common term. Like, it's not something that the average Egyptologist would know. I know this because I asked 2 of my friends who both have PhDs in Egyptology and who actively work in the field if they had ever heard of it, and they were both like, no. But they all know the creation myth. So it's the kind of thing that like somebody who specifically studies Egyptian mythology or hieroglyphs and like the interpretation and study of hieroglyphs, they would probably know that. But the average person that studies ancient Egypt doesn't. And it's a really interesting phenomenon as well, because they've taken this turn and they've essentially co-opted it. And because Egyptologists aren't writing papers on the significance of Zep Tepi, what does Zep Tepi mean, et cetera, it means that then when people search for it, the only results that come up are all the alt history stuff, and there's nothing that really comes up that's like academic papers publishing against it, because why would we use the word Zep Tepi to talk about the first time? We would just say the first time, the moment of creation in the Egyptian creation myth. How I think of it in my head is kind of like, it's the equivalent of kind of going up to somebody and saying, oh, have you ever heard of Runu Per Emheru? Haven't you ever heard of the spells coming forth by day? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? You don't know how do you not know about the spells coming forth by day? It is the most important text in Egyptian funerary architecture, because what we actually call it in the colloquial language is the Book of the Dead. Like, that's essentially what they're doing. They're taking a piece of language and they're twisting it to make it seem like it's a lot more significant than it actually is. It isn't actually like, commonly used as a terminology within Egyptology. And so, so that's my whole thing that I've prepared about Zep Tepi. and why it seems like it's a thing, but Zahi Hawass doesn't know about it. He has no reason to really know about it. He's not going to, he might be teaching the creation myth, but he's not teaching the Egyptian creation myth in the original Egyptian. Yeah. So anyway, let's get back into this. We're over halfway through.
The building of the pyramids.
That, to me, that's ludicrous. I mean, I worked construction for a long time, and they're using the food and the graves and stuff. And I mean, I saw many.
JT, you just gave me a little heart attack there. I was going to be like, no!
Construction workers eating McDonald's while there was other construction workers eating steak. It just depends on if he's a foreman, if he's an engineer, or if he's just a grunt. The painters don't eat as good as the electricians, who don't eat as good as the engineers and the architects. So, having 10,000 people buried in the shade of the pyramid in a grave, mind you, that only says they worked for Khufu. It never says that they built the pyramids. So that's a stretch.
That's cherry picking evidence. You cannot make evidence fit. Like saying that I will only accept one specific type of evidence is like completely against archaeological science and shows that you don't understand how archaeological theory works and how all of history and what we know about it has been recreated.
Assumption.
Or interpreted and studied.
These are pyramid builder graves. But in addition to that, there could be graves of tens of thousands of slaves off the site that haven't been discovered that were doing all of the grunt work while somebody else was holding the plumb bob. So to me, it's ludicrous to say there were no slaves involved.
But to be clear and to be fair to Dr. Hawass, you don't know for a fact that it's not true, do you? What are you saying?
Of course not. That's ancient history, right? We can all speculate, we can all spitball, but the only things we really know are carbon dating and written records, kind of, sort of. But I mean, we fudge written records all the time, even today. So.
All right.
Wow. Okay.
Jimmy, you raised your hand.
I completely agree with everything that Dan just said. However, something very important for all of us to be humbled by is the fact that the Great Pyramids of Giza were allegedly created by the Old Kingdom. And there's a few things that need to be considered when we discuss what we think we know and what we don't know about the pyramids construction, which is that after the pyramids construction, there was 3 other changes of kingdom within Egypt. Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom, and between them are missing chapters of human history within Egypt. For example, between the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom is approximately 126 years of completely missing history.
It's not completely missing history. Have you ever heard of the tomb of Anktifi?
It's conjecture. We think that it may have been a revolt within Egypt, a civil war, but something happened to completely overthrow the 4th dynasty going into the 5th dynasty. And then between the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom is approximately 186 years of missing history. So the point that I'm making is that
history's not, oh my gosh, there is okay.
Within each of those 2 chapters of missing history, that's longer than any human lifespan. It's multiple generations, which means that nobody was alive afterwards to say what was happening before. We have absolutely no idea how the pyramids were constructed, how, or even precisely when. And actually, I should point out that, Zahi, you mentioned about the movement of stones, and you cited that 60-ton stone that they depict being moved on a wooden sledge. Well, that is only 60 tons, whereas the Egyptians had moved the 1,000 metric ton Ramesseum statue. 1,000 metric tons is well over 2.2 million pounds, and it was inexplicably moved approximately 170 miles from Aswan to Luxor. That is 17 times heavier than that statue that you repeatedly cite. Not twice as heavy, not 5 times as heavy, not 10 times as heavy, 17 times heavier. And are we to pretend that wooden sleds are infinitely scalable? The reality is that there is a mystery here. We don't know how they constructed the pyramids. We don't know how they lifted and stacked 80-ton stones 300 feet above the ground. And again, I just would like your clarification. Are you saying that there has been no exploration into any of those hidden voids yet? Above the...
It's saying that they're in the midst of planning it. I don't understand what he's not getting out of it. He's so impatient.
Grand Gallery, can you tell me in good faith that you're certain that nobody within the Egypt Ministry of Antiquities has explored that yet?
Yeah, because if they did, that would be a really, really big problem. The last time that they were able to completely uncover like a new area into the Great Pyramid was in the 1800s, which is when they blew it apart with dynamite. Like, if they were going to drill a hole into the Great Pyramid to get someone in there as he's applying, don't you think people would notice?
Okay, well, a lot to unpack there. So first of all...
Yes or no, Zahi? Sorry, Piers.
Dr. Hawass, answer that last question definitively. You know, you've been asked it directly.
Yeah, and there is like studies and like these aren't completely missing chapters. Okay, so I mentioned the tomb of Ankhtifi, which is the tomb of an ancient Egyptian nobleman from the first intermediate period, the period between the Old and the Middle Kingdom. And he was a nomarch, so like a local governor. And his tomb is actually like one of the best sources we have for knowing what's going on in that pyramid. And it talks about the crap state that everything was in. The records during the first and second and third intermediate periods they're not as good as they are in the Old, Middle, and New Kingdom, but that's because there were times of political strife. People were too busy to write things down, especially when their language is so complicated. There were times of not essentially entirely civilization collapse or like everybody dying, as it seems like he implied, but there were periods when they had more important things to focus on. There were probably droughts, famine, and wars going on, so they had other things that they needed to take care of at the time, and the record is just not as good. But there, by no means does that mean that record doesn't exist at all, or that they're complete blanks in time. Like that's not true.
Are you saying on the record there has been no exploration in the way that Jimmy...
Do you know the Muffin Man? Do you know the Muffin Man?
Corsetti says.
Jimmy, I want you to understand, this conspiracy theory that you do have is wrong completely. We do not hide anything. If the Egyptian... Listen, if we do have any evidence that pyramids are back 15,000 years old, what's wrong with this? We'll announce this. We are not against anything. But what I am saying, we are not hiding anything. And you have to know this. Your theory that we have something that we hide is not true. Always any discovery and any excavation. We are not hiding anything. I want you to know
what
this.
about the second? Okay, but what about...
Yes.
Well,
yes,
what about...
no.
Hang on. What about the second point that Jimmy made, which is surrounding the Ramesseum, which was 1,000 tons? How did that get moved?
You know...
Denial.
I want to do one thing. We have...
Yeah, I'd like to see Jimmy. Let's just maybe Jimmy should just take his tools and go drill a hole in the pyramids. Let's go see how well that goes over. Yeah, go ahead. Go try and do that, please. He was so good at getting the trees removed at Göbekli Tepe. I'm sure that if he just took his drill to Giza, he would be able to get stuff done.
I can give you 3 evidence of moving stones. We have the Wadi al-Jarf papyri. Do you know anything about this papyri? The papyri is talking
I'm sure they
about an overseer of a workman who went to Tortora to cut the white fine limestone for the casing of the pyramid. And he talked about his
small
boss.
Stones.
His name is
Those
Didi.
stones are like
we
4 to
found
6
his
tons
tomb.
at the most.
You have in the Middle Kingdom.
And by the way, when it comes to that papyrus you keep talking about, it says absolutely the word pyramid is not mentioned one single time.
That's because they don't use the word pyramid the way that we use the word pyramid. They called it different things.
You do not. I gave you the time to talk. Give me the time to answer you, please.
You never said yes or no, though, to that prior question about exploring that pyramid. You didn't say yes or no. You said there's no secrets, but yes or no, have you been in there?
No.
I told you we are not. We are talking now. We are searching now. We are discussing now. How can we enter this void? Then
I know that's
have
true,
the voids.
But have you done it yet?
No.
No, I told you this year it will happen. It will happen this year before the end of 20.
I don't know if it's going to happen this year. I think if they do end up doing it, I think it'll be released in January, February. So mark it on your calendars, folks.
2025 and the beginning of the year, we are going to show all the voids inside the pyramid.
All right, Dr. Hawass, let me ask
in
you.
a TV.
Dr. Hawass, let me ask you. What is the one thing you are desperate to discover about the pyramids which you've never been able to answer yourself?
Number one, I want to tell Jimmy that we found all the evidence of how the Great Pyramid was built. Completely.
No,
we don't
because
really
you haven't
have
explained how
any.
they lifted and stacked 80-ton stones 300 feet above the ground, and prior to that, they were moved
On top of other stones?
500 miles from Aswan.
We have it shown. We have it shown in scenes, in tombs, in the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom and the Old Kingdom. You have to go and read. You have to go and read about this. But number two,
which tomb?
What
I already
really,
know that that's not true, but I know that that's not true. So for the audience, why don't you cite which tomb so we can Google it upon ourselves?
The tomb of Jehoshaphat. The tomb of Jehoshaphat at Deir el-Barsha. It shows 172 men are moving a 60 tons statue. Then what's
which
your
is 17
problem?
times
I don't
less
understand.
weight than the Ramesseum statue.
How do you move a 1,000-ton stone, like you said? How do you do that?
Do you know, I want to show you today, our workmen today, who are the descendants of the workmen in the past. They move in front of me more than 60,000 tons. This is a national project. This Egyptian who lived in the time of Ramses II.
This is in the Old Kingdom, and there's absolutely no documentation of any kind describing how the pyramids were constructed. Again, there's missing.
That's because, I mean, here's the thing, is that this is just like, again, it's a classic misunderstanding of like, it says only, well, I will only accept the engineering plans and detailed idiot's guide to how to build pyramids as the only evidence that the Egyptians knew how to build it. Like, sometimes you have to accept that evidence might not exist, either because it wasn't important enough for them to write it down, which I don't think is true, or that it just hasn't survived to modern day. That is like not. I'm not quite sure why these people seem to think that, you know, everything has survived completely intact to do with the pyramids. Like, the amount of what we haven't found about the pyramids probably vastly outweighs what we actually have found. And you can't, like, there's no way that we don't know that information was probably written down, but it hasn't been found yet in a tomb because it wasn't information that was relevant to getting somebody into the afterlife. So why would you be buried with it? Who wants to get buried in their tomb with their work computer? Can somebody tell me that? How many of you who are managers and who wants to get buried and go into the afterlife with their with their entire work history buried with them? Like, that's not what you take with you when you go into the next life. So it's entirely possible that if those records existed, they were written on papyrus and they were either reused or they were, kept somewhere that we've found, hopefully, that we've not found yet. Maybe there's an ancient library somewhere that's been buried that's full of all of the detailed plans that they're going to find in a decade or so. I would hope that that's what's going to happen. But there's absolutely no way to know that. It's also entirely possible that if they're written on papyrus, they've disintegrated because they're made out of a biological material that hasn't survived the ensuing 4,500 years. And you just have to accept that. And so an important point that I want to make is that, so instead of just like fruitlessly trying to look for one specific piece of evidence, archaeologists are instead expanding our remit to try and look for other types of evidence. So this is what a lot of what Zahi and Mark Lenner have done, where instead of looking for the exact examples of how they built the tombs or like the building plans, they're instead looking for the remains of the people who actually built the tombs. And this is what they're talking about with the finding the pyramid town and the tombs of the pyramid workers. So they're focusing instead on a different kind of proof, but obviously because it's not exactly this type of proof that these people is the only type that they will deem acceptable, they're not going to accept it. And at the end of the day, there's not really something you can't force somebody to accept your viewpoint. That's just not how humans work.
History that happened right after.
You are
absolutely
wrong.
no,
You are wrong.
Out of the 100,000 hieroglyphs in Egypt, there's not one single one that depicts or otherwise describes in any capacity the construction of the pyramids. And again, that diary that you keep citing actually doesn't include the word pyramid whatsoever. Okay. Just like Dan Richards had just said, it's an assumption. You know, Zahi, if you would like to invite me out to show me, you know, the exploration of this hidden void, I think it'd be very good for the influence.
Oh, way to try. Oh, okay. So he's just here to try and sweeten up Zahi Hawass so that he can get a scoop for his YouTube channel. I see what it's all about now.
So the various influencers within this community on the internet that are concerned that things have not been shared on the up and up.
I'd actually like to come.
I like you. I know
I'd like to come as the
shooting
impartial guide on that trip, actually.
And
Dan,
I would report on it, honestly, Zahi.
But listen.
Let me bring Dan back in. Dan, out of interest, the same question to you,
Can
Dan.
I say?
Wait, hang on one second, Dr. Hawass. Dan Richards, what is the thing you would most like to just know for sure about the pyramids?
Honestly, as a guy who's worked construction a lot, there's one of the questions that are unanswered about the construction of the pyramids. You can say that you know how they lifted the stones all you want, but the squaring of that edifice to itself, the Great Pyramid has about a 2-inch deviation on a 756-foot run. That's less than 1,000%.
I'm just also going to say that what he's probably talking about is the outside.
You can't do that with ropes because they're going to sag. You can't do it with putting sticks back to back because you're going to get errors. Nowadays, we use transits and lasers. 500 years ago, they built the observatory at Greenwich, and it's not remotely as accurate to itself as the Great Pyramid. So honestly, I would just like to know how the hell they got it so perfectly accurate in its own footprint. How do they square something on that size? It's like machine age accuracy on a gigantic scale. So do you have any idea how they squared the edifice, Dr. Hawass?
Did you go to Dahshur to see the pyramids of Khufu's father?
No, I have not been to Egypt, but I'm aware of the pyramids at Dahshur.
If you haven't been in Egypt, how can you base on what you see? Because you have to know one thing. When the Egyptian began to think about building Khufu pyramid, you have to know they choose Giza Plateau, because Giza Plateau is a part of the Muqattam formation. Level 1 and 2 are very bad stones, but level 3 has the best quality of the stones. The old stones for building the pyramid came 1,000 feet away from the base of Khufu pyramid, and we located the location of the quarry. But before they moved the stones, they had to cut in the solid rock until they made the base of the pyramid 8 meters of solid rock, no stones. And they established a ramp from the quarry to the southwest corner. The ramp was constructed of stone, rubble, and sand. And we excavated the root of this ramp, and we found it. Then the Egyptian had a team cutting.
Sorry. I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
The Egyptian divided the workmen, as we hear from Wadi al-Jarf papyri, that I would like Jimmy to read first before he can talk to me. The Wadi al-Jarf
I've been there 3
papyri
times.
is explaining...
Don't come at me like that. I've been to Giza 3 times, and I loved it. And I would love to go out there with you. I sincerely mean that. I know it sounds like I'm sharpshooting you, but...
I'm talking about the Wadi al-Jarf papyri. You have to read it to understand.
Right, and it says what?
No,
it doesn't say anything. It doesn't say anything about how they constructed the pyramids.
I'm talking about the accuracy, how they made it so square. It's extremely perfect, and it's the kind of thing that we can't.
I mean, this like again, like the yes, there are stones at the pyramids that are incredibly well carved and put together, but I want to point out that at the moment, because we can't dismantle the Great Pyramid, we don't know that all of the stones are carved like that. It's all the stuff that you see. So, of course, that stuff is going to be done to a pretty high standard. But we don't know that that's the case throughout the entire structure, and that the inner core doesn't have much more roughly dressed stone.
Do today without lasers. We don't do it. You can't do it with ropes. You can't do it with sticks. There's a mystery there.
What's your conclusion? No, I need to understand
My
your conclusion.
honestly,
What do you want to say?
My conclusion is they used, you know, the plates, the plate with many rings, like a target that you have in the museum in Cairo. I believe that was a target that they used a concave mirror and used the pinpoint of light to fill up circles at different distances. I haven't been able to test that, but they had to use something more than ropes because you can't get that kind of accuracy without something better. I'm trying to keep it low tech.
Again, my question, what is your conclusion? If the Egyptians did not do this, who did it, in your opinion?
I'm not saying the Egyptians didn't do it. I'm talking about specific problems and how to solve them. I don't care if Gandhi did it. I'm talking about how to get it squared. And so I'm trying to answer that without going to lasers or ancient high tech. But honestly, the issue here, that as I see it, is you're telling me
he's worked in construction, fair enough. But he's not a stonemason. Why is he asking Zahi Hawass? Zahi Hawass isn't a stonemason. He doesn't work with stone. Why don't they have a stonemason? Like, I'm pretty sure there are actually stonemasons all over the internet who would say, yes, this is entirely possible. I've had them comment on the channel before.
That the problem's solved. I'm telling you that if I was tasked with doing that, as a guy who's been tasked with pouring foundations, I couldn't do that. I would be looking at it going, I'm going to need better tools than what you had available.
Could it be that they were just better back then at construction than we are?
They were also just doing it all the time. Like, the Great Pyramid is not the first pyramid that was built out of stone. That's the Zep Tepi. Oh, hello, kitty. Come and say hello. Come and say hello to the cat. Who wants to see the cat if we're talking about Egypt? 2 seconds. Mama. Kitty. Hey, poo-poo. Hey, yeah. It's almost her dinner time. Hello. Look at my pretty kitty princess. My wee little Bastet. Mm-hmm. She's so cute. Oh my gosh, she is shedding so much because it is so hot in Scotland. It's crazy, crazy warm here right now. Like, she is not happy, but at the same time I'm scratching her chin. So, say bye-bye. Say bye-bye. Yes, I'll let you go. Just gonna go claw my carpet somewhere.
Oh, no.
Well, you're talking about a margin of error. So, I mean, you still have to figure out how they measured. I mean,
there were geniuses all over the place in that period.
My big thing that I always bring up about these is, why is nobody sitting around saying, how did the Greeks build the Parthenon? Or how did the Romans build the Pantheon? It's the world's biggest concrete solid dome. How did they manage it? Why is it they only pick on the Egyptians, guys? Riddle me that.
Absolutely.
Of the history of the planet. You know, I mean, why couldn't they just have had construction geniuses who, bereft of things like lasers, had to come up with other brilliant ideas to do? I mean, look, somebody built this, right? Somebody built this. I have to assume they were humans. It's most likely they were Egyptian humans. So we should be able to agree on those broad parameters. The fascinating thing about the pyramids is we just don't really know how they did it. And I hope...
And it exceeds the known capabilities of the dynastic Egyptians.
Yeah. Well, what's that, sorry?
What the pyramids themselves exceed the known capabilities of the dynastic Egyptians.
So that's what makes it so...
No, it doesn't. You don't know that for sure.
So fascinating. And look, we've run out of time. I could talk about this for hours. I've become a real Egypt pyramid nerd because of this. But I actually love your idea, Jimmy, that we all go out to the pyramids. Maybe at the moment that you get inside these chambers and we actually discover maybe the secrets of one of the great wonders of the world.
I mean, I have absolutely no doubt that they're going to video when that happens, and then premiere it somewhere. I don't know if Piers is going to be invited.
I've got to leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Hawass, for joining me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
But I will be happy to see all of you in Cairo.
Brilliant.
And take you in a tour.
Brilliant.
And show you what I'm talking about.
I would actually love to see the pyramids. I think it'd be an amazing episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Let's go on the road. Let's go to the pyramids.
I'm waiting.
Let's do it.
I'm waiting for you, and I will give you a personal tour.
Love it. I'm in. Done. Agreed. Gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Nice
I
talking
appreciate
to
it.
all of you.
Thank you.
Really
You
good
too.
to talk
Thank
to
you,
you.
Zahi. It was a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Zahi.
I'd
It's
love
good to
meet
meet
you.
you.
See you in Cairo. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Piers. Take care, Jim.
Thank you.
All done. Okay, we made it. And it only took me like almost 2 hours. And muting myself. I don't know. How long was I muted for? Like a couple minutes? Oh, well. All right, let's... Yes, my cat is a beauty. Her name is Emma. She is a Russian blue, and she's sitting below my chair because I haven't fed her yet. So I'll have to finish the stream in a couple minutes because she needs her evening food. Temperature in Scotland has been just really hot. It's been over 20. And I live in, unusually for the UK, an insulated house. And in the UK, houses are built to keep heat. They're not built to cool down. And so when it gets really warm, my house just retains the heat throughout the night, which is really difficult. We actually had to buy a portable air conditioner to put into my daughter's room because her room is like the hottest one in the house. And like I was just really concerned about her sleeping in a room that was not cooling down at night, and she was clearly having quite a bad sleep. But anyway, I think it was like 22 today, 22 degrees, which with the humidity here is just like, yeah, not pleasant. Humidity and lack of any kind of sensible system of air conditioning outside of a car. Personal tour is something amazing, but acting like a complete and total knob on the internet. Yeah, I wish. Can I get a personal tour with Zahi? I mean, I have like, I know people who've met him. I've not met him myself because I don't work in Egypt. But yeah, all of this is in Hawass's book. Great callback to Joe Rogan. Has anybody bought the book on the back of Joe Rogan? It's like, I think it's like £50. I haven't splurged on it yet. But yeah. Does anybody have any, you've got like a few minutes left. If you have any final questions, put them in the chat for me. I'm so sorry about muting myself. I hope it wasn't too onerous. I'll go back and delete it out of the live stream. Yeah, it just shows when I really get going on a rant, I clearly just stop reading the chat and I was skimming over some other stuff. So just too much multitasking for me. Need to learn to focus. Yeah, overall, I mean, there were people that were saying that this went really badly. I don't know if I agree. I don't think it was a win for necessarily either side. I think what's pretty clear is that it's one of those things where, you know, you're speaking the same language, but you are clearly not communicating. You know, people are asking him questions and he thinks he's answering them, but he's not answering them as clearly or with the answer that they necessarily want him to say, or the answer that they're necessarily looking for, I think. At least he didn't spend the whole interview saying, it's in my book. So a market improvement on the last time. I would have thought, though, that, again, since the Zep Tepi thing came up, maybe somebody would have Googled it and briefed him on what exactly that means. But as I was saying, it's just one of these kind of niche esoteric terms that's been conflated into being more significant than it actually is in broad Egyptology. And since Zahi Hawass, who, you know, he teaches the creation myth, sure, but he's not like a linguist or like I don't know what they call an epigrapher. Is that the right term for people who study hieroglyphics? But he's not like, his focus isn't specifically on Egyptian mythology and Egyptian creation myth and translating the Egyptian creation myth. So I don't really see any reason why he would know that term. What was in the void above the entrance? It's just basically like a room. Let me see if I can actually find a picture of it before we go. Great Pyramid Void. Because there were pictures of it when it first came out, but it was really blurry. Like it wasn't a very good image. But I have seen it, and there it is. 1 second. Agree. Don't care. Let's see if I can put this in here. Does that see? Okay. we can see this now. So yeah, this is the one that's above the entrance from the Scan Pyramids project. They're not very good at updating their website, to be fair. That is something where I feel like Egypt really lags behind in other countries. There are other countries that are really good about publishing their press releases on a website. Like Pompeii is really good about publishing press releases on websites with lots of photos, etc., and places where you can contact them. Egypt is not. They publish stuff on they put a lot of their press releases about discoveries on Facebook, on the Ministry of Tourism Facebook. They don't have they have an official website, but it is bare bones at best. It doesn't have a lot of information, and you tend to get I really wish that they wouldn't do that, and that they would put it on a legit website, and then they can also have it on Facebook. But anyway, yeah, there's nothing in it. As you can see, that stone is looking pretty roughly dressed to me. Is not super. I mean, the corbelling above is fine, but those aren't you always hear when they talk about the pyramids, you can't fit a knife between the blocks. I'm pretty sure that they fit an endoscope between a crack in the blocks there. So clearly there's a crack on it somewhere. Hard to watch. Load bearing only. Construction method. Construction method. I mean, okay, so element design. I have an entire video on my channel that is me building the Great Pyramid out of Lego, the Lego set, and I have a voiceover on it talking about all of the things that we know about the construction of the actual Great Pyramid, who it was built by, what techniques they probably used, the blocks, where they came from, people involved in the project, etc., etc. So I would recommend watching that, because I think it's 30 minutes long. I could be wrong, but that's going to give you a lot more detail than I'd be able to give you in the live stream. So yes, I would reference that. I can't remember what the title is off the top of my head, but yeah. Okay. So yeah, so they've gone into the entrance void, and Zahi says that they are going to be going into the Grand Gallery void this year. Or actually, well, he didn't really say that, or I think he misspoke when he was saying that. I think they're at a point where they think they have the technology to be able to do it without really causing any damage to the pyramid. So it could be that they're planning to do that this winter. The Egyptian archaeology news cycle tends to release a lot of their news. They don't release it as soon as it happens. They wait. So they tend to release stuff in January, February. I find that's when the news cycle tends to peak for them. So hopefully that will come out this January. Mark your calendars. We'll see if anything comes of it. And then we can talk about it on Archaeology News. So yeah, thanks so long for coming. 50 people, that's pretty good for one of my live streams. Normally there's about 10. So I hope that you've all enjoyed this. Please don't forget, if you liked what you saw, to like the live stream and subscribe, etc. before you leave. I do videos on archaeology discoveries every month, so you can bet that if there is more that they're going to discover and go into for the Great Pyramid this winter, I'm going to be covering in Archaeology News. And yeah, I think that's everything. So thank you so much for coming along and bearing with me when I go on a rant and mute myself, and watching this with me, and for all your great questions and comments. I hope that I've answered as well as I really can for these things, and I hope you all have an excellent week. For anybody who's still here, I am hosting an so Friday this week is Ask an Archaeologist Day in the UK. I am hosting a live stream that day on the channel. I'm going to have a few guests coming along. I'm going to keep them secret for now. I'm going to be putting out posts asking for people's questions that they would like us to answer, or please come and join the live stream on Friday night, 8 to 10 p.m. UK time, and come ask us your burning questions about archaeology. Yeah, it should be fun. And then next week we're back to Tomb Raider. So we're going to watch me, hopefully not muted, really badly make my way through a shipwreck in Tomb Raider 2. All right, guys, we'll see you later. Have a good evening, and thank you so much for coming along. I'll see you on my next adventure inside archaeology.